to our top story. 23 News reporter Sydney Stoffrigan was at the news conference in Chicago where lawyers blame the corporations involved for what they say is failure to provide emergency and security measures.
Jason's mother, Nyla Jenkins, says her son was set to graduate this May. She says Walmart and Brosnan risk consultants did not protect her child.
You got your underwears locked up, but you don't have your knives locked up.
An utter failure. That's how Curcio and Cachado and a Why Not Law groups describe the response from Walmart and Brosnan consultants the day Jason Jenkins was stabbed to death inside the Northridge Drive store in Rockford. Jack Cachado says Walmart had plenty of time to stop suspect Timothy Carter before anyone got hurt.
When there is a threat in a store, you have to have plans in place. At the very least, people like Jason Jenkins should have been alerted of the threat so they could have sought safety. But unfortunately, it appears none of that has occurred.
The Jenkins family lawsuit asks for more than $150,000 in damages, $50,000 from each defendant for the pain of losing their loved one. Jason Jenkins' mother, Nyla, describes her son as a happy, caring person who had just made plans for a senior prom before his life was taken.
My child is not the only one that's in there working. You know, you didn't even check the people that shop there. It could have been me. He could have targeted. You know, it could have been an old lady he could have targeted.
A Why Not Law Group managing attorney, Mohammed Why Not, says the biggest tragedy about this case is that it was preventable.
Jason wasn't just stabbed in the back by Mr. Carter that night. He was stabbed in the back by Walmart, who failed him.
One allegation questions how easy it is to access deadly weapons in Walmart. The investigation leads lawyers to believe Carter took the knives directly from the store.
Thank you, Sydney. And the substantial presence of Walmart and Bronson Risk Consultant in Cook County is what Curcio and Casiado say brings the case to their firm. The suit will be officially filed this afternoon.